In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 9th episode of Afraid of Nothing. Today, we're going to revisit the S.K. Pierce house, but this time with Ken Watson, who's the curator, as well as the main force behind renovating the house with his wife, Memie. Ken's going to share kind of the architectural story behind S.K. Pierce and kind of what it's like to renovate completely a house like this from something that's close to being condemned to something that's an absolute beautiful landmark. Also, we're going to encourage his wife, Memie, to get on and share some of their ghostly experiences. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a great show, and they're wonderful people, and I want to introduce you to them. So without further ado, here's Ken, and eventually we'll get Memie on. Okay, so I'm here with Ken Watson from the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion. Ken is the curator. He's also with his wife, Memie, he's also the chief, architect who's renovated the building. Everybody talks about S.K. Pierce in terms of, one of the most haunted locations, but what is kind of underappreciated is how beautiful this house really is. So I want to spend the first part of this interview, Ken, talking to you about the shape it was in when you got here and kind of what you've done to it to bring it back to its glory.
So the Victorian Mansion is actually a second Empire Victorian style, very popular from the mid-1850s to the late 1880s, mainly in the Northeast and the Midwest. This particular house, the style, it's very ornate, usually a box shape or a rectangle shape with a tower, which this building does have, and has a mansard roof, which is a two-tier roofing system. This particular house, interestingly enough, it was designed by the architect Boyden, who was Eldridge Boyden, who was a very famous architect in the Northeast area. He was based out of Worcester. He mainly did public buildings and municipal buildings, such as the Taunton State Hospital, the Mechanics Hall in Worcester, but he did some Victorian homes, not many.
You did a talk at the American Legion down the street earlier this week, and it was a great talk. You talked mostly about kind of the house and its kind of how, its architectural capability. Can you talk a little bit about the state it was in when you first about how big it is so people can imagine it? It kind of looks like the Munster House a little bit. It's got that kind of feel to it. It's really come to life. But just how big this is, how big this house is, and how big the project was. One thing I walked away with after your talk was this thing was only a few years away from being condemned, and this town almost lost a great landmark, and this kind of would have been a tragedy. So I'd just like to spend a couple minutes talking about that, the state it was in, how big it is, and the task of just renovating this thing.
Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the features in the house. It has 6,661 square feet of living space. Has 58 doors, 75 windows. Surprisingly, it only sits on a little over half an acre of land, so it takes up most of the land that it sits on. The house incorporated the previous home that sat here, and what I mean by that is it incorporated the foundation from that previous home into the Victorian. So when people come in here and they see the stone, part of the foundation, not the brick, that's original. But the state this home was in when the current owner purchased it, it was in quite a bit of disrepair. We had a number of pigeons that made it their residence inside the attic, and there was just a lot of mold on the outside and a lot of damage on the inside from years of neglect. No fault of the previous owners. It was just an enormous project financially for anyone to take on this. And the mansion was lucky enough to have the current owners they do, Rob and Allison Conti. And they have the ability to restore this mansion, and they have dedicated any resource they can to do as such.
Now, you mentioned They bought this sight unseen, right? They bought this.
They did buy this, yes, he bought this house sight unseen, not realizing what he was getting into until he saw it in person, but he hasn't backed away from the challenge, and he's definitely stepped up and done a great job. So.
And we should say his wife, Allison, does she do a lot of the kind of interior decorating in terms of picking out the wallpaper? And
yeah,
like
she makes a lot of those choices in regards to the decorating, and Rob does most of the, as far as the structural aspects of it. So.
Now, is it true that S.K. Pierce was the third most, famous or productive or wealthy furniture maker in Gardner?
In Gardner, he was probably the third most successful chair manufacturer and in the city. And in addition to that, he also purchased over 180 pieces of property in his lifetime.
So he's an immensely wealthy guy, and there are two other people that were more successful than him. Do we know if they common names that we're aware of?
Well, one would have been Haywood. Top of my head, I can't think of the second one.
One of the things from your talk is a lot of the furniture here, the original furniture, is no longer here. From a prior owner, there was an auction and things were taken away, so a lot of the original furniture was taken away. Is that true?
That's true. In 1999, that current owner had it, before she sold the home, had an auction company come in, and unfortunately, they came in unsupervised, and everything was pretty much taken out of here. Chandeliers, all the furniture, rugs. Even the current owner who had some items in here lost some of those items.
How did you refurnish this place? Because it looks great. A lot of the furniture that's in here, how did you find that?
So most of the furniture that's in here currently is from the previous owner, Edwin and Lillian, and they were kind enough to leave, a good portion of the furniture that's currently here to the Rob and Allison. So.
The first day you and Memie came here, when you walked in the door, did you pick up on the spirits right away when you came here? I know I'll interview her at a later time. I see her nodding her head at the end of the table down here, but what was your...
So our introduction to the mansion was back in 2013, and actually we hooked up with my two sisters, and they invited us to come along on a ghost investigation. And lo and behold, this was the place, and it was very active that night. Meaning, just as Edwin was giving the tour, in one of the rooms we heard two women talking, and there was no one in the room.
It's never stopped women from talking before, right, man? I'll edit that out.
So that's just one of the experiences. From that point, we ended up holding our own events, paranormal investigating events, some events such like psychic events, like pendulum use, dowsing use, in the paranormal aspect of it. So.
Did you have a feeling then, your first time here, that you'd be back, and to the degree you had just thought it was just a one-time, one-off, and you just realized it would...
That's what I thought, but one thing led to another, and actually my wife, Memie, and I, we developed a close friendship with Marion Luoma, and also Edwin and Lillian, who were the owners at that time.
And the book, is it Bones in the Basement by Joni Mahan?
Yes.
That is about their experience. Marion talked about that in an interview last time. Okay, let's spend a little bit more on the architecture and kind of what it took to get this place up to snuff, and then we'll go into the ghost stuff in the last part, okay?
When I walked in here, Rob and Allison hired me to do the interior restoration, or a majority of it. So I'd probably done about 90% of it. And it was really in tough shape. And as I mentioned before, Marion Luoma and the current owner and I feel that if it wasn't tackled immediately, the problem is that this house probably is on its way to being condemned in the near future. So a lot of difficulties with the walls and the mold and the pigeon dung that was up there, and all these problems had to be addressed, refurbishing the woodwork.
Could you talk about how thick and deep the pigeon was? I'm thinking you're talking...
And the thickest was probably about 5 inches. The thinnest was about 1 inch. And that was throughout the third floor in the attic area. So we had, consequently, through my restoration, I try to save everything. Unfortunately, we had to take down the ceilings there because of the health issues involved with that.
So with a house like this, you start at the top. You mentioned you start at the top, but then you got to go down to the basement. So the roof and the basement are the two first things in the exterior that you start with, and then you work on the inside. Is that the way it worked on the renovation?
Yeah, how it began here was the exterior, the siding, and getting the painting and repairs done that needed there, and then a new roof was applied.
Is it a slate roof, or what type of roof?
It was originally a slate roof, Currently, on the very top of the roof, the top tier is asphalt, but the original slate is on the mansard. It's still present, and the intention is to leave it there.
Now, what was the hardest room? I'm going to guess it's the third floor, but what was the toughest room for you to renovate in this whole house? Was there one that was the biggest challenge?
Believe it or not, the nursery.
The nursery?
One of the smallest rooms.
Now, that's on the second floor, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Well, I had to deal with a popcorn ceiling that had an enormous amount of cracks in it, and the walls were deteriorating. Ceiling molding was in rough shape that I had to do a lot of repair with. So it was very time-consuming to do it right, and it looks spectacular now, though. But
were there any rooms that were the most? I know we said we get to go stuff later, but as you're working on it, were there any rooms that had the most activity, paranormal-wise, in terms that you?
Yep, every room.
Every room, okay. Because when I went here, it's like 3 years ago with the shaman, Brad Little Frog Hudson, I first met you guys. It was in the early stages, probably about maybe, a year in maybe, I'm guessing, because you had mentioned, hey, it's under construction and whatever, just expect that. And we didn't get a lot of activity up until it started on the second floor in that nursery room, really picked up on the third floor. Even on the top level there was something. And then in the basement, there in the cistern, there was some stuff that picked up. But it was mostly quiet down here. So I didn't know. So everywhere you pretty much have had. And yes. I guess there's a portal right outside here where we're.
There is near the grand staircase. Yeah, every room. I've had an experience in every room in this home.
And are they familiar? Are they new spirits that come and go, or is it the same?
Familiar.
Familiar. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Nothing malevolent. Pleasant interactions, whether it be a gentle touch or. Disembodied voice. Hello. Yeah. Goodbye.
Now, Memie said apparitions have gone through her, which isn't totally pleasant, I guess, right? Has that happened? And I'm sorry, Memie, you're not mic'd up, but you've had apparitions walk through you, right, in this house, basically?
She's actually channeled to the spirits.
She did? Okay. All right. Okay, great. Anything else in terms of what was, you had a surprise finding kind of at the end. You found a well, right? Is there any, that's...
Yes, unexpectedly, we always suspected there was a well on the outside. Didn't know where it was, and doing some yard work and cleaning up some, digging up some bushes and the roots and stumps, lo and behold, it was found. The diameter is only maybe 18-inch diameter, and coming up through the debris in the well is a lead pipe which veers off before it reaches the top into the basement of the house.
So what was the water system like? Because you have a cistern. You have a couple cisterns. You have one in the upstairs, right, and one in the basement. So the water, it would collect rainwater, I guess, for water. Would that well also be for, was that for the original house before this one, or any idea whether?
Quite possibly could have been used as, the drinking or their water supply for the previous house. It definitely was used in this house because, as I mentioned, the pipe comes right into the house. So they siphon the well water into the house. As far as the cisterns, although they had primitive filtration systems back then, it was most likely the water was used for laundry or bathing at the most. Dirty water. There's a gutter system in the attic which channels the water to the cistern on the third floor, which is a rather small one, only holds 724 gallons. And then that cistern is connected to the basement with piping, and there's a shut-off valve on the second floor to stop the flow. But the basement cistern holds 2,400 gallons of water, so that's a large one.
Yeah, and there's some stories about that we'll get to. In working on this house, what are some of the cool features that were modern for the times that you found? Like the speaker phones, I guess, would be one thing. Are there some things you found that were kind of like unique for them that other houses might not have had, or made it a little more modern for its time?
Well, I mean, there's some remnants of wiring which would have been used for a servant's alarm system, meaning someone could be in the sitting room, they hit a button or whatever device they use, which would set off an alarm for the servant to come and attend to them. It would show the servant what location they had to go to. And so there's remnants of that system.
So this house there's two entranceways. There's a servant's way, which for some reason I always come through. I don't know why. Maybe it's telling me subconsciously.
Actually, it's actually not the servant's entrance.
It's not anymore. Okay.
It's documented as the side entrance.
Really? Okay. Yes. I thought it was okay.
There's one rumor and a side entrance.
One myth ended. Okay. Okay. And because the main entrance is a little more grandiose, correct? Or
yes.
What? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Is there, before we go to the ghost stuff, any other stuff you want to share about kind of this? Well, actually, when you first started working on this, was there heat? Was there a bathroom or anything?
There was no heat, and I actually started the work in the fall, and I worked through the winter with space heaters, room by room. The warmest I got in the house was maybe 55, and the room I was working.
And how many months? Obviously,
it took 4 years to bring it to finish the first, second, third, and tower in the attic.
When did you get the heating in the running bathroom, the working bathroom?
After the first winter of the ownership by Robin Allison.
That was good. Okay, yeah. Because I don't think it was, when I was here, I don't think it was cold, but it was not bad. I don't think you had bathrooms that worked, right, at that time, I don't think? About 3 years
we
ago.
had one working.
Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the... One entity I want to talk about, because my realtor, I bought a house recently just down the street in Gardner, and the realtor said to me, he started talking about this house without even knowing, and he mentioned about the boy in the window. And I've heard different stories that he came from like down a lake, maybe he drowned in a pond or whatever down, or he drowned here in a cistern. Do you know kind of what the story is about Gordon, the boy in the window?
Well, there's no documentation that has been found yet on a drowning, which in the future, when I have more spare time, I plan on investigating. But it's suspected from just paranormal investigations that some people say it was the cistern in the basement. He accidentally fell in and he drowned.
It certainly was big enough, as you just mentioned.
It was big enough that an adult could probably even drown in there. Yeah. And then there's other people that have picked up strongly, maybe a quarter of a mile from here, there's a pond. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Pierce owned land right up to that pond at one point. So there's speculation that he may have drowned in either area, but we don't know anything about the boy, only from investigating, but there's no documentation as of yet to know exactly who it is and if it actually occurred.
Now, have you seen him? Have you personally seen him in your 4 years here?
I have a picture of him.
Yeah. That you
in
took?
Spirit.
Okay, yeah.
I have not seen him as an apparition, but he has spoken to me. Just once out loud. How you been, Ken? In a little boy's voice.
Wow. Okay.
But I have seen three apparitions, 2 in full color and 1 in silhouette.
I was going to ask about that in terms of some people are, I don't know, audio, in terms of paranormal experiences. They hear stuff. Some are, visual. I know Memie's all of them. So you get, and some are intuition or whatever. I don't know how to break it up, but you get all the above, right? Basically, how do they...
Yes, so disembodied voice, like I said. I leave here, I'm the only one in the house, and I've said goodbye, and only one time it's happened, but a woman on the second floor said goodbye, just like that. My wife Memie and I were carrying up some lumber to the 3rd floor, and I got just about to the top of the steps, and a man's voice out loud said, "Good morning." And I said, "Good morning," and I turned to Memie, and she said, "Why'd you say that twice?" I said, "I didn't. I was answering the man that said good morning."
Wow. Do they ever follow you home?
They've enjoyed a few car rides about halfway home.
Really?
I can feel them in the house. I can usually sense when they're around. Not recently, but multiple times they have traveled in the car about halfway home. I live about an hour and 15 minutes away, so. And
do you have to kind of tell them to leave, or
no? They just all of a sudden they're gone.
They're gone. When do you think this will be open to the public? Is there any plan for? I know there's still some stuff. You're finalizing some things.
Yeah, we're just going to finalize one last permit, and then we're hoping it will be a go for at least tours and events and investigations. His long-term plan is the bed and breakfast. There's a few additional things that need to be done before that can happen. So not really sure on the time frame on that yet. But
does that affect the kitchen at all? Do you have to do more?
No, because actually he's going to opt not to do any cooking in here.
Okay.
He's going to provide breakfast from an outside source. So.
Okay. All right. Wow. And is there going to be a live-in person that's here, as the host for people, I guess? I guess you'd have to have a hotel. Yeah, there'll be somebody employed that will be here at all times, yeah. Kind of crazy that it's almost getting to that point now, isn't it? After 4 years, it just kind of, yeah, okay, wow. Would you want to take on a project like this again, or are you done? This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Do you think you guys would ever do, if someone else said, hey, this, because it's a great resume piece, right? Have you ever been approached by anyone saying, hey, what about this house? Will you do it, or?
Not yet.
Okay.
I would probably take it on again.
You would? Oh, my God. Okay, then I'll have to look for a place. Afraid of starting your own podcast? Buzzsprout makes it easy. In fact, it's so good, they've already helped over 100,000 people launch their own podcast, including me. Buzzsprout has helped me get onto many great platforms, including Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. You also get a great-looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop onto other websites, detailed analytics to see how you're doing. They're addicting, trust me. Also, tools to promote your episodes, like sound bites to give your listeners a tease of what each episode is about. Buzzsprout is not only a user-friendly platform, they continually provide useful videos, articles, and tutorials to help you hone your podcast game. To start your own podcast and get a $20 Amazon gift card, follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you and helps support the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Buzzsprout, the best place to launch your podcast. Don't be afraid to start today. So, Ken, talk about some of your personal experiences here. You guys have done, I mean, it's not just things that happen to you. You guys have done things like table tipping and things like that to kind of bring spirits out and see what happens. Can you share some of those experiences?
Sure. We've done a number of table tipping sessions, mainly Mary and Lou Ulmer and Edwin and Lillian have participated, and we've had some pretty exciting experiences with the spirits here. And for those who don't understand what table tipping is, it's a physical mediumship of communicating with spirit. It's used as a heavy table, usually three-legged, and the table tips, hence table tipping. And you direct the spirit how to communicate by tapping the leg. Each tap would be a letter or a number, whatever you designate for the communication. So we had some wonderful experiences here. We did it so many times that we knew what spirit was on the table without even asking the name.
And did you do it in the same room every time?
Yeah, in the hallway on the second floor.
Oh, in the second floor by
Every
the
time.
big safe. Okay.
I think one of the most compelling experiences in the table tipping, for whatever reason, Ellen Pierce, who we believe is one of the spirits here, and through all our sessions before, we had done about 4 or 5 prior, and she had never got on the table and communicated with us. And she got attached to the table, and she spelled out her name, and then we asked what message she had for us, and she tapped out the letter S and the letter O. Well, that doesn't make any sense at all. All of a sudden, the table slowly tipped and went to the floor and slid across the floor.
Wow.
And it banged into the safe. And it backed up, and it banged into the safe. We were not doing this.
So
most of our hands were off the table.
Yeah, I was going to say, on table tipping, it's like on a Ouija board, your hand's supposed to be on it lightly, right? So when it tipped over, did you guys just
Nope.
jump back or what?
We had to jump out of our chairs
Yeah,
and kind of
okay,
lean in an awkward position and go with the slide.
Did it slide slowly or quickly?
Quickly.
Quickly, okay.
No one's hand was under the table to give it the assistance. It just went on its own. What's interesting is we stopped the table tipping session temporarily, and we're all looking all over the safe. What's in the safe? What does she want us to find that she's banging the safe? And behind the safe, on top of the baseboard, which Lillian and Edwin had no idea was there, were 2 dice covered in cobwebs and had a hole in it like a child's bead. And we knocked them out, and one had the letter S, one had the letter O on it. Directly beneath it was a small, shiny object that was trapped between the baseboard and the floorboard. And I kicked it up and got it out, and it was a skeleton key. So then we got back on the table to continue the session, and Ellen continued to communicate with us. And we asked her where that skeleton key, what door in the house did it go to? And she tapped out 9. And lo and behold, that key fit into room number 9, and there's 58 other doors in this house, and not one other door did it fit.
Now, we should also say there are numbered rooms because this used to be a boarding house, or what is that?
Boarding house, yeah.
Yep. And it's kind of like numbered, not in sequence. You showed in your talk, actually, that it could be inferred as a Masonic
on the
symbol.
second floor,
yeah. Interesting. Okay.
But the numbers came when it was a Victorian Inn tourist house.
Okay.
And then it transitioned into a boarding house later.
Ellen Pierce, can you tell us where in kind of the chain of Pierces, was she like married to S.K.? Was she afterwards?
S.K. Pierce built this home. He was married to another woman, Susan Jackson, and they were married for 30 years. Then he had a son, Frank, And she unexpectedly passed away. Shortly after they moved into this home in 1875, she passed away in January of the following year. So only about maybe 4 weeks she lived in this house. And then he remained single for the next 2 years, and we don't know how he met Ellen. Her name was Ellen West, and she was from Brookfield.
She was young, right?
Yeah, interestingly, we don't know how they met, but they connected and they wed, and she was 27 and he was 57.
Let's hope I'm 57.
I'm not 27.
You're taken. All right. Okay, cool. And let's see. All right. And let's talk about, so is she one of the big presence here, whatever you say it, plural, here, but she just, she's here, but she doesn't make herself known, like in the table tipping, or is she?
Very rare that she will interact with people trying to communicate with her in the paranormal aspect of things. She usually, I've experienced her to be mainly on the second floor, although she will go throughout the house, mainly in front of the red room or by the stairway going to the third floor, which kind of makes sense because there's other spirits that kind of hover around the door to view everything that's going on. You'll know she's around if you get a very gentle touch in those areas, or you'll have this aroma of a perfume that you've never even smelled before. I've never smelled anything like that before. It's beautiful.
Do the ghosts get along for the most part that are here, do you think? Or?
Seems like I don't hear any fighting in the background.
Do they even acknowledge each other? I mean, that's always a kind of a, when I did the documentary, one guy said in Tim McGuire in Salem, his biggest fear was he wouldn't get along with the other ghosts in the house. He's not afraid about being a ghost, but he wouldn't get along. So I always wondered, do they get along, or are they just kind of oblivious of each other?
Well, it's funny. One experience was with the spirit box on the second floor, and Mary and Luoma and Memie and I were just kind of sitting there, and had the spirit box on, and all of a sudden I heard, "Good morning, Maddie. Good morning, Sue." On the spirit, it was like, what?
Oh my God, that's funny.
And if no one knows, I mean, it's believed Maddie Conwell is one of the spirits here, and it's believed she was a nanny.
Yeah, she's second floor, right?
We believe she was,
okay,
but it's just documented as a servant, so we don't really know for sure if she was a nanny, but we believe she was. And then Susan, it's thought that she may have been Susan Lloyd, who was here at the same time as Maddie, and she was the housekeeper. And she would have, if what we believe to be true, she would have been living in room number 8, which would have been on the third floor, the maid's room.
How do you identify who these are? I mean, you probably never know for sure, right?
You never know for sure.
Is it intuition at that point?
Until they sit down and talk to us like I'm talking to you.
Okay.
You don't know for sure.
Yeah.
It all comes down to multiple investigations, psychic mediums, and we try to compile everything. And I mean, if everybody comes up with the same general consensus, we'll lean that way, but you still can never say 100% that it's who we think it is actually who it is.
All right. And I don't want you to get you in trouble with the house spirits. Is there a favorite one here? Or?
Oh, Ellen.
Ellen. Okay. All right.
I think she's the one that jumped in bed with me. So. I think she spooned with me.
Okay. Well, yeah. Tell that then. Actually, go ahead. What happened with that?
So multiple times I've slept here by myself in the red room, and that's the only place I sleep usually. And I'm lying there, and I don't even know what time of the night it was. All of a sudden, the mattress bounced. Like somebody would dive bomb a mattress, like a child would or whatever, but it was a heavy bounce. It shook me up and down. And the next thing I felt was this pressure on my back for about 30 seconds, like somebody was hugging me. That's all I could think of. And it didn't scare me. I'm saying to myself, well, I didn't want to turn around, roll over either and see what was there, but it didn't scare me. But I was like, well, this hasn't happened before.
Wow. And it hasn't happened since? It's just...
No, but... sleeping again, we had multiple things happen in that room with us when we slept. Again, I woke up for some reason in the middle of the night, and I'm facing the doorway entering into the red room, and I look up in a full color, like I'm looking at you, apparition of a woman.
Wow.
In Victorian clothing. Looking at, and Memie and I were sleeping there that night, looking at the both of us at the bed. I closed my eyes and said, no, I'm not seeing that. I got wet eyes from waking up or whatever. And I opened my eyes.
What era was she dressed in? Do you know?
Victorian.
Victorian. Okay. It wasn't Ellen though, right?
It was tough to tell because my eyes were just.
Yeah.
I would suspect one of the female. That's all I can say in this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Ellen or not, but she was there.
Now, you took one of the great pictures, which you were kind enough to share on the film I did. It was at the staircase. Do you want to talk about that? The one, you know which one I'm talking about? The staircase
With the three spirits in it?
Yeah.
So I have over 3,000 pictures during my duration of doing the restoration. Mainly to
do a coffee book.
Mainly, yeah, it's going to be, actually. I'm going to do a book.
Excellent. That'd be great.
Actually, just to document everything. But I always take pictures of the stairway before I leave, excuse me. And never happened before, never happened again, but this one picture, I caught a little girl running around the post in a run with her elbow bent, and then a gentleman standing on the stairs, what appeared to be a white shirt, not really detailed, with his arm across his chest or abdomen, very proper, and then the face of Mr. Pierce on the post. And I've never seen it again, or I never saw it.
And did you see all three in real time, or did you just?
No, I didn't even know they were there.
Okay.
I snapped 10 pictures.
Yeah.
And
you just do it?
They weren't in any of the other pictures, just that one.
There's another picture with you sitting on the stairwell, and there's this kind of weird, smoky or whatever object behind you. What's that?
So, again, Marion Luoma and Rodney Barr, Memie and I was sitting on the landing of the grand staircase. They were down below, and we decided, let's do a spirit box. Something different, break up the day. And the little girl started communicating with us, who we believe is Rachel, which is
2 years old, died of Spanish flu, you believe?
Nope, died of gastroenteritis.
Okay.
She was Edward Pierce's second daughter. She died in 1916. And I had asked, can you say hi to Marion? Can you say her name? Marion, clear as day. And then I heard, and they heard down here on the first floor, footsteps coming down to the landing. And then I go, somebody's standing right behind me. So Memie, and it was a warm day, and all of a sudden they said my breath was like I was out in the cold, and I didn't feel cold though. And she took 3 pictures, boom, 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 snap, snap. And in all 3 pictures there was the apparition of a little girl.
Now, speaking of cold spots, you hear about that a lot. Do you get that here? Do you get cold spots, or is it not with these entities?
That one we did.
Go ahead.
No, that one we did.
Yeah.
Because we were way down at the bottom of the stairs, and we could see the cold breath coming out, and so I snapped the 3 pictures.
Yeah.
And it was kind of cute when you looked at it, because you see the little bun on the top of her head. People are like, he's got long arms. That was a selfie. It's like, I don't think so. We were down here, and he was way up there.
Yeah, everybody's always ready to
away.
Now, there's some great pictures that you have. That one blew me away. Now, the 2 portals, were you aware of the portals? I know a shaman came in, I guess.
Yes.
And did the shaman find both of them, or how did you uncover?
I don't know if he found them both. We've just known from Edwin and Lillian.
Okay.
Actually,
well, the one down here
was found by a Native American during an investigation at some point.
Yeah.
And Edwin and Lillian hadn't known about that until that had occurred with the Native American. The one on the 3rd floor, I think, was more or less stumbled upon by people.
That's the billiards room, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The stronger one is here on the
I was going to say, which is more active.
People have many experiences here. They feel dizzy, or they feel like they're being gently pushed forward, backwards, or their pants will start shaking like happened one time.
That was weird.
Really?
Yes.
Marion mentioned something with a football player that was here.
Yes, Randy. Yeah.
Can you mention that at all? Is that
yes.
right? Okay.
Randy Gregory, he was a defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys, actually, and he was helping with a camp. I don't know if it was associated with the Patriots in this area, but he contacted the owner and he was interested in paranormal. He set up a time to come out here with some of his friends. He loved the place. But at the end, we did the portal, and he was standing a few feet away. We're all just standing there, very calm day, no breeze, and his friend stood at the portal, and he had shorts on, and his shorts started violently shaking. At the exact same time, Randy Gregory, being a young football player with all the money, had this big heavy chain with a skull on it, and it flipped on him.
Oh, God.
He goes, my chain just flipped, and he didn't touch it.
Wow.
So there's a lot of energy
That's a lot of energy. Wow, that's crazy. Marion had mentioned some stuff that happened to her there too, and she also mentioned about the portal, a stepmom coming through or something. I don't know if she ever talked to you guys. I'm going to actually hand the mic.
That was with table tipping.
Okay, through table tipping.
Yep. Okay,
I'm going to hand the mic to Memie, really, just to force her to be involved a little bit. To hand you the mic, I'm going to ask you to share some of your paranormal experiences, whether it's been entities you've dealt with or things like that. So do you identify more as kind of the witch or the medium, or is it?
It depends on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm a witch. I don't hide it from people. I'm also a psychic. I'm also a medium.
Which did you identify with first? When you were like a young kid, how did you know that you had these capabilities growing up?
Because we had a ghost man in our house.
A ghost man?
I always called him a ghost man, yeah. I was 6 years old, and he always stood in the doorway, and I always thought it was my dad, but my mom said, no, he's not, you're nuts. So I had experiences with him, and he kind of scared me. I was going towards the stairs one day, and a pencil came flying at me, and I missed every single step on the way down.
Oh, my God.
And I said, Mom, somebody threw a pencil at me. So, you know what mom says, what happens to you when you're a kid. But
Are you the only one in your family that has that ability that you're aware of, or?
as far as I know,
Yeah.
my brother and sister block it out, but I know they have it. So
That's kind of like I interviewed Colleen Costello, and she was adopted, and she was in this kind of strong Catholic upbringing where you
Right.
don't bring that stuff up. And it was kind of hard. She had to kind of deal with it on her own. How did you did you hide it? How did you deal with it? And as you grew older, how did you kind of come to embrace it?
I told my parents about it, and they just said, okay. When I got older, they said, okay, whatever. Because my father was going to be a priest, and his sister was a nun, so they just accepted it. later
Really?
on. Yeah.
That's actually refreshing. They were nice about it. They didn't try to talk you up and make you go see a shrink or anything like that. It was fun. Yeah.
No, I was lucky.
Yeah. So you still live in the same house today, correct? With the
Yeah,
ghost?
we
Okay.
bought it off my mom.
Yeah, and the ghost man is still there in the basement.
Yeah, he built the house,
Along with
actually.
the 4 others.
Yeah,
There are how many other entities?
5 total in the house.
yeah.
Really? And you have 2 cats.
We have 2 cats now. We had 3, but they hang around the house, too. They come and go.
Okay. How do cats deal with kind of entities in the house? Are they just very comfortable with them, or?
Oh, they try to go under the door and play with the ghost man in the cellar.
Really? So the ghost man is one very prominent, and there are some other kind of ones that come and go in your house, or
My mom and dad.
All right.
My father plays a music box, and he likes to flicker all the lights.
wouldn't want to leave that house then if that's all that the family's still there.
No, my mom bangs things. She
Oh, does
bangs
she?
all the doors, and it's just like, great, here she comes again.
Yeah.
She's always talked, and she's always yelled. My father hardly said anything, so that's why he plays the music boxes. And one of them doesn't work. When we
It's-
hear it, we're like, Dad's here.
Every Christmas, it's a Christmas music box, and almost every Christmas it will stop playing.
And oh wow, that's amazing. Did you ever meet her parents?
The mom.
You did?
And the father had passed away when Memie and I got together.
Now, are these like? I know we're off the course of SK Parents for right now, but are these like shadow people or apparitions that you see, or do you sense them? Do you see them, or?
My mom, I walked through in the kitchen. I was washing the dishes, and I could smell lilacs because she used to just run across the neighbor's yard, come back giggling, and I'm like, what'd you do? She goes, I cut off the lilacs, look. And so every time I'd be not every time, I'd be in the kitchen, I could smell lilacs, so I know she would be there, or I'd hear banging. And one time I turned around, and I walked right through, and I goes, don't do that to me.
Yeah.
Scared the crap out of me. But that's the only time I saw her in the kitchen, I walked right through her.
No wonder the ghosts don't follow you back because you have ghosts already at your house where you live. Were you with Ken ghost hunting the first time you came to this house?
Yeah, we came with my sister-in-laws.
And from your perspective, what was when you walked into the house? Did you pick up stuff right away, or what was your impression when you walked in?
I could feel them. I'm like, oh, they know we're here.
And were they apprehensive? Were they kind of curious, or what was the mood you thought?
They were like, oh, great, a witch is here.
Oh, really? They knew?
A lot of times ghosts, they know when we're here because they know we can communicate. Because when we do rituals, they know we're in between the veils. We communicate with them.
Yeah.
And entities, or what people say, evil ones, they're kind of scared of us because they know we can see them and communicate, so they don't even want to go near us.
Do you have a little, in terms of, like I have a house, and I'm going to invite you and Ken over with Marion, and I'm going to ask you, and you be kind of, do you do a cleansing, or what do you do when you come over and what do you do when you go into a place and then you leave? What's your recommendation for people?
For cleansing?
For protection, I guess. If you're going to a haunted house, like I'm going to go to the Conjuring house in a couple of weeks. What would you recommend I do before I go into the house and after I leave? What should I do?
Well, I find out what your religious beliefs are, and then I'll, surround yourself with a white light. If you have crystals, if you wear a cross, wear those. A lot of times people will go in and they'll just buy a religious symbol off the shelf and they'll wear it.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know who touched that before you.
Yep.
So you go home and you cleanse that.
What if I was religious and wore a cross? Would that kind of make a spirit stay away from me and take away from my ghost experience, or would it just protect me?
It'll protect you.
It would protect me. Okay. Yeah, I'm a religious guy. Every day, once I started being positive and being thankful every day, things started happening better for me. So I'm religious that way. In terms of what religion, I mean, I grew up Catholic. I just don't know. I just believe in good and evil, and I believe in a higher power and positive energy and stuff. That's kind of the religion I am. So yeah, so I wonder if a guy like me that was going in, what would it be? Would was there a special prayer or something you say before you go in, or do you?
You can say a prayer. You surround yourself with white light. Ground yourself before you go in, like, put both feet on the ground, balance yourself.
Say I protect myself from any or all energies and or forces that may come to do me harm.
Okay.
And
So
you want to say both.
You have to have a balance.
I always see people burning sage a lot. Is that helpful? Or
Sage is to cleanse you, it's to ground you, it's to balance you.
Okay.
Frankincense and myrrh.
And I'm going to go off the track a little bit. Just mirrors in a bed. I'm sorry, because someone brought this up to me in another one. I just want while you're here, ask you. I've been told, I interviewed someone, and someone they had on their podcast talked about having mirrors facing the bed is a no-no. You hear it's a no-no for feng shui, for a bunch of things. What are your thoughts? Is there having a mirror facing your bed, is that a bad practice to have, or does it depend on how you protect yourself?
Well, they say that having mirrors, some of the spirits can go into the mirror and it takes your soul away. It depends on whose beliefs it is. I use mirrors for protection, but it depends on what's happening. Sometimes, you'll have people who are so jealous that they're sending you negative thoughts and they're trying to hurt you. So you have mirrors that when you put them there, they're looking at their own negative energies and they're reflecting that back to
You
themselves.
reverse the mirror so it's facing outward.
Okay, interesting. So you use it to protect yourself. I haven't heard about that. What's the most haunted item, do you think, in the S.K. Pierce house that you've come across? Or is it just not an item, it's a room? He's pointing to a
James.
piano.
To the organ over there.
If you want to say an item that's actually in the house and not roaming the house.
Yeah. So there's this old organ, a Prescott organ. It looks like, it's definitely
a pump organ.
It's a pump organ.
A parlor pump organ.
Okay. Where did you get this from? Was it from?
Lillian brought it in.
Yeah.
Okay. And what have you experienced? What are some of the experiences with this?
He likes to see what's going on. They had him over here in the corner.
Now, you said he. Is there a name? Is there a ghost or something?
James. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
He was over here in the corner, and he did not like being there. So I said, we need to move him. So he was here. Nope, he doesn't want to be there. So we moved him over here, and I polished him and everything, and he was so much happier that he told me his name was James. And a couple of other psychics came in, and they told him the same thing. I said, okay, so now we're getting his name is really James. So the more psychics that came in and picked up the name James, so this is how when other people come in and they say his name is James, so we write it down going, okay, I'm not the only one that came up with this. So this is how we validate.
Yep. What's his connection to the organ? Did he play it in a church or any idea?
Don't know.
Really? Okay. Could have been in his home or something or whatever. Interesting.
Interestingly, one paranormal group was sitting at this table we're talking at right now with a spirit box, trying to communicate with James, and an organ started playing on the spirit box.
Really? Wow, that's great. That's crazy. Okay. And I want to just kind of go a couple more things. So what have been some of your most fondest experiences in this house?
We were reading Christmas stories upstairs to the kids in the Eno's room, or the children's old room. And Kenny went out to go downstairs to get something, and I'm sitting in the chair. We had the two little chairs lined up. And once he got up and left, somebody sat right in the other chair. You could see the little cushion go down in the chair. And I'm like, well, that's cool. So I started reading. I'm like, would you like me to sing? And I don't sing very well. I started singing. The kid got up and sat me back in the other chair he was sitting in. I'm like, thanks a lot.
Oh, my gosh, that's great.
And the other one was I was laying in bed. We decided to sleep in the copper room at that time. It had the copper wallpaper. And I was facing towards the left, and he was facing towards the right, and the person across from us and the master was coughing and coughing all night long. And I heard two people talking towards my left, and I saw a pair of shoes, and I'm like, well, there's nobody there. Well, nobody's there, but I can see their shoes. And I'm like, I sat up, and I see an apparition of it was all black, but the hair in the bun. Walk right by, walk right through the door into the master, and about 2 minutes after that, she stopped coughing, and I'm like, Ken, nope, he's sleeping, and I didn't have anybody to validate it with me because I was the only one awake.
But you have a lot of validated ones with Ken. You both have seen things together a lot? Okay. All right. Now, I can't let you go without talking about the dolls in the house. Let's talk about Mortimer. Tell us kind of the dolls in the house and their history, and they kind of almost a mascot now for this house. So tell us a little bit about Mortimer and the doll and kind of his history. And I guess you're his tailor now or something. You make clothes for him and stuff. So what do you?
Somebody ripped his leg. His leg had a big hole in it, and the stuffing was falling out. And I said, geez, I got to take him home. And everybody's like afraid of him. And I'm like chasing Marion around the house. Marion, look at him. She's like, get away from me. Because he jumped out at her. So it was
that's right, yeah.
Yeah, he jumped out at her, so I kind of chased her with him.
So that is the thing with this house, where occasionally, clown dolls will jump off chairs or balls will go across floors, and dolls, and
Playing.
Yeah.
I have yet to see the ball. Marion sees it all the time. I'm so jealous.
It still happens to her, really? I mean,
last time was like a year ago. It
Really?
rolled out of her room and it rolled around the corner.
cool. What would you say about this? If someone was thinking of coming to visit this house, what would you tell them to expect when they come here? What would you say? I mean, I would imagine be respectful, but what would you say someone might have based on the experience coming to the SK Pierce house, and what you want them to take away from visiting this place?
You got to keep an open mind when you come in. Because if you're fearful, you're always going to pick up things that, you create.
So it's almost like the secret, like what you put out to the universe, you get back, right? So you walk in with a positive energy level, and you probably could have a positive experience. But if you bring bad energy or whatever, you could be treated that way. Is that accurate?
Yes, people retain their personality. If I pick on you, you're going to retaliate back to me.
No, I won't.
Meaning spirit.
Well, spirit. If I pick on you, you're going to pick on me back too.
So, the activity, I think you guys were mentioning, you're doing a couple tours here. You did a talk at the American Legion about a week ago. Full house, a lot of people, mostly focusing on the architectural aspect, which we started off with, and you touched a little bit on the ghost stuff, but kept people captivated for an hour and a half. Great. And people signed up for some tours, and there are people coming for a tour, probably another half an hour or so we'll wrap this up. But you said the first one was yesterday, and there was a smaller group, but people had some experiences.
Had some interesting experiences with the first group that came through. One lady was gently touched, she said, across, believe it was her head or her face. And the other one was a gentleman that was sitting by himself in the sitting room. Everyone else was upstairs, and I was in the hall. And all of a sudden he goes, "What?" And I go, "What's the matter?" He goes, "I just heard whispering behind me." and he goes, "I turned, there was no one there." And that's a common thing that happens in here.
When I interviewed Marion a couple weeks ago, she had said that the level had gone down a bit. But I think you guys find that the more you have people visit and more they kind of like do some of these tours, it picks up. Is it mostly because the spirits are stirred a little bit, or?
There's no rhyme or reason. I have gone almost 2 months without anything happening.
And did you think they were gone at that point? Did you think?
No, I could feel that they were here. They don't want to interact for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden, it will be day and night. They'll be doing, whether it be footsteps or being touched or just any interaction can possibly happen.
Do you think they're always here? Or do you think there's something to that portal where they come and go?
I think they're always here.
Always here? Okay. All right.
I think they're always here, but there are other spirits that come and go.
Okay. And I just asked Memie about, what if someone was coming to the house, what could they expect? Now, you're the curator, the historian, you've done the renovation, you know this house intimately. What would you tell people, if you can advise somebody going to come to spend a night or two in this house? Any tips or things you'd ask them to look out for?
As Memie said, definitely walk in here with an open mind, a positive mind. Walk in not expecting to have an interaction. Don't force on the spirit, have something happen. If it's going to happen, it will. And usually I found watching people that have come in here with investigations and just tours, if they just relax and enjoy the place, they're the ones that have the interaction.
All right, well, Ken and Memie, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. This is a great house. I encourage people, once it goes live, to come check it out because you've done beautiful work. And I realized listening to your talk last week, I don't think you're kind of a humble guy and woman. You don't take credit. I mean, I know it's Rob and Allison, but this house probably wouldn't have been here in 5 years unless, they put the money down and you guys did what you did. And this is really a landmark, an historic landmark. And it's, hopefully at some point the town of Gardner will realize, what was done. And this is a great thing that it's still here. So we're very thankful for your work. So thank you. Okay, so after the interview concluded, Ken and Memie had me go to the front staircase where the portal is, which is probably about 4 spindles back on the railing. They said, don't touch it. Just close your eyes and just kind of see if anything happens. And I kind of swayed a little bit. I rocked. It's almost like I was on a boat, and I kind of said, I feel like I'm kind of being moved around slightly. I said, yep, that happens a lot. And then It was a flash. I thought, oh, they just took a picture of me. There was like a bright flash of light. And I opened my eyes and I said, okay, I smiled. I said, you guys just took a picture, huh? And they said, no, we didn't. And then I realized even if they had a smartphone out, I wouldn't see a flash like that. So they were kind of surprised by that. It was really weird to have a bright flash of light come out of the darkness when my eyes were closed. I didn't know what that was. So yet another gift from the S.K. Pierce house.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout-out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.